Hello.
Hi there. Right, so all systems go. So, yeah, we're live. Great, okay. As we're officially starting in 6 minutes, I thought what we'd do is just have a very quick overview of the session, what it's intended to do exactly. So, to those people that I can see tuning in, this session is part of a series called Biofutures, and essentially it involves conversations with seminal figures that are working at the interface of biological and human systems. And throughout the series, it will cover a range of different aspects of biofutures, from bioart as today to biodesign, as applied to everything from buildings to cities to products to furniture, you name it, to biocomputing. And essentially within this particular series, you'll see one group of discussions, and then we have two, well, a second and a third series launching after that. So I hope that will cover areas of interest to you. Throughout the sessions, please do send your questions. You'll see on this platform, there's a little question mark option for you. Send me the questions, and what we'll do is we'll try and answer them within this session today. But if we don't have time, then I will check back in with Audrey and we will get back to you later. And also there'll be a couple of instances in which I will ask you to send any thoughts or comments that you have. And just for context, although we're running this series, we're actually going to be having some other activities going on as well, where we'll be integrating some of your ideas about what the biofuture might be. So we've just got a couple of minutes to go, and because we're officially starting then, I don't want to start the conversation with Audrey just yet. But what I thought might be interesting is, Audrey, if you share with those people that are already watching a little bit about your background and how you came to be in bioart.
Well, my name is Audrey Aguirre, and I am a Mexican interdisciplinary artist. My background is in sculpture. Well, I studied in Mexico City when I used to live in Mexico, and also in Florence, Italy, where I did my degree on sculpture. Then last year, 2021, I graduated from MA Art and Science in Central St. Martin's in London. And at that moment, it was when I found the field of the bioart and how it is. I found this convergence of art and science, and I found it really interesting how the artist is entering into the laboratories, entering this discussion of using living systems, living matter as a material to do artworks and to do this interaction of art and science. So yes, at that moment in the MA was when I started to research about these topics of the bioart. And yes, I see the artist, I see myself as the artist is the researcher that goes into other fields, that maybe outside of the art to make this interdisciplinarity works. And this is how this convergence of art and science is working now at the moment. We are living in a very important moment in history, where we can see this convergence of art and science really making great projects, outcomes. And yes, it's really amazing to see this convergence. At the moment, I am working on my project, on my current project, that is Terra's Lux. That in this project I explore notions and scientific research about microbiology, biotechnology, and astrobiology, and also in the emergent field of astromycology. And In my project, I explore and I focus on the energy that is released on the microbial ecosystems on soil, and how this, through a thing called microbial fuel cells, you can generate energy. And this can be, I don't know, maybe if you see it in the future, this can be the energy that we will be using in the future societies. No, so now it's just a research. There's a lot of people dreaming about this, but I am sure that in the future, this energy we will be able to use it to for the future of the future societies. So at the moment, I'm working on that. At the moment, I'm also working with in collaboration with an astrobiologist. She is Marta Filippa Simos. She is a researcher at the laboratory and lunar and planetary science in the University of Technology in Macau in China. And we started this collaboration. So practically now the project Terra's Lux, that is focused on the microbial microecosystems, has extended into a vision of the macrocosm, because the research of the astrobiologist, it encloses the notions of how how we can relate the microbial ecosystems on Earth with the potentially speculative microbial ecosystems on outer space, and what is the relation of all this, and what is the relation with art. So at the moment, my project has this connection with the macrocosm, because I'm starting this research on the scientific research of this astrobiologist, and it has we have been producing a lot of very interesting outcomes. One of these outcomes is the creation of a new biomaterial that is created with this new material that is called graphene. So it's created with layers of graphene. We also use fungal resources like the Physarum polycephalum, that is commonly named as the slime mold. Also the fungi Antarcticus cryomycetes, that has properties of resistance to the radioactivity. Also in this biomaterial, we are putting silver nanoparticles. Silver nanoparticles is part of the research of this of the astrobiologist. So we are trying to create this speculative new biomaterial that is going to be shaped in the shape of the human body. So this biomaterial, what it's going to do is cover the human body and prepare the human body to missions or to go out in the outer space. So what this biomaterial is going to provide to the human body is resistance to radioactivity, to possible threats of microbes outside in the outer space. And at this point of my research, I understand that this convergence of the bioart and science, and how can we as an artist, for example, studying the research of an astrobiologist, of a microbiologist, we can achieve a project that belongs to the future, to what is going to be seen in the future. How so this is how I think bioart is so important now, because even if the projects that the artists that we are creating, it seems like a kind of speculative and something that doesn't exist yet, but through research and through implementation of the new technologies, the future generations, the future societies will achieve to create this type of projects for the benefit of humanity. So We are very excited about this project. At the moment, we are trying to create a prototype in the form of a biomaterial, but we are very excited, and this is the link with bioart, with the scientific research, and I think it's really important to see what can we achieve through artistic intuition, because what the artist can provide to humanity is not just the fact of creating beautiful things or something that is going to look beautiful. So the real duty of the artist is to study the scientific research and enhance the scientific research into something new, something that doesn't still exist, but it will still exist in the future. So this is the important for me of the artist. The true art is not going to illustrate science. The true art is going to create something based on this scientific research that is going to help humanity in the future. So at the moment,
Yeah. That's wonderful. I knew a little bit about your projects, as I think a number of the people that are tuning in that are familiar with you will, but it is extremely impressive, the extent and the complexity of the projects that you're taking on and that you're working on collaboratively. The first question really I wanted to ask next relates to the matter of practice, because obviously historically, when one trained in the arts, although one would have done a foundation course or some sort of series of courses that familiarized you with what are in effect your mediums, the nature of those mediums of past was inherently different to that of bioart, in that historically one worked with inert materials, one worked with materials that in effect had not their own agency, and so you as an artist had control, or as much control as one can, over those materials. But of course, living systems, living organisms have their own agency, and the properties of different kinds of living organism can be very different. So I just wondered if you could share with us a little bit about how you've come to familiarize yourself with the different types of organism, and how they work as a medium, as a co-collaborator, whatever you want to call them, and some of the challenges that you found in working with materials or collaborators with agency, and so that you are not the ultimate definer of what comes to be, but that organism that you're working with has a say, as it were, in the process too.
yeah, so as an artist, I see, for example, the living systems and all, and these beings that are microbes, the microbial ecosystems and all nature, for me is like a material to create something. But in this creating, you have to acknowledge also the respect for these beings, that it's not just because we have ideas and we want to create things and we forget about the ethics. It's very important to remember the part of the ethical part, that we as humans have the potential to create, but we always have to consider the respect towards the other beings, even if they are microbial. So for me, everything started. It's not easy to as an artist to enter into the bioart field, because obviously you have to have access to laboratories, you have to have access to scientific research, you have to study a lot to get really into the field, and that is just through doing a lot of scientific research, try to understand what for example, microbiologists or biotechnologists people are doing at the moment, and then is through trying to use this to create your art. So it's challenging, because for example, if you want to, what I do in my project is I try to use the microscopic images of organic matter that I see through the microscope, to try to have a visual field of how it works in the microscopic field. So it's challenging to enter into this field. Is challenging to try to work. For example, now in my project, I want to research about the microbial fuels cells that are inside of the soil. So for this, obviously, as an artist, my background is to working with clay, working with materials, working with these materials that are more conventional and more related to the history of art. So what I'm going to do is through collaboration with the scientists, that is how you can achieve to get into that research. I have started recently in the last days. I started a communication with a microbiologist that is the Professor Carlo Avignone Rosa, and he's a microbiologist in the University of Surrey. And we talk about the project, and we are going to start this collaboration. So in that way, I will be able to access on how to work with the microbial fuel cells, because this is a work that you have to do on a lab, or you have to know certain kind of things to achieve the results that you want to see. So in my case, I want to see and I want to visualize, or maybe have some data about how the energy of the microbial fuel cells work, and how we can use it, for example, to use soil as a future fuel for humanity. So this is the way how you can get involved with bioart. Other ways, for example, I had my first experience with a biology laboratory when I was studying at Central San Martins, because they have the facilities there. So as a student or as an artist that want to start in this field, you could try a course in this school in Central San Martins, or but this is kind of difficult, because bioart is not yet very common. It's not everybody knows about. So it's something that is emerging now, and it's difficult to practice to achieve the results that you want. But if you work hard, as always, you can achieve. So.
And what's really coming across is the fact that, you know, historically, when people think of artists, certainly of old, unless it was an artist in training, let's say in Renaissance Italy, where they were in a studio and there were a lot of them, and it was almost like an art production line. More recently, we've tended to think of the artist as a sole practitioner, someone that, unless they're working as a collective, will typically be working on their own in a studio, and they will very much be the author of their ideas. They will be, in effect, the sole author. But what you're speaking to in your practice is the necessity with bioart to, firstly, obviously collaborate with scientists that are expert in the species, and also that have the facilities that you need as an artist to work with these species. And though you haven't, I don't think you mentioned it, but obviously when you're doing that, you have the health and safety issues, don't you? Because some of the species, like E. coli, can be dangerous if they are not handled in the right way. So this imperative, if you like, to work collaboratively, and also to have a degree of open-mindedness and flexibility as to quite what it is that you are going to create at the end of it, in that you don't quite know how the organism is going to respond. So you've got to keep an open-ended perspective on the end result, it's actually a very profound shift in art, I think. And the only analogy I can think of historically would be if we were to think to things like the living root bridges in India and these other actually relatively small number of practices around the world, both in the now and the past, where you're working with the likes of a tree or some other living thing, but usually at the macro level, to create something. So it really is a, you know, almost like a Renaissance leap in terms of how fundamental this shift is. The other thing as relating to, if you like, the present, wanted to ask you to expand on is the fact that when collaborating, obviously you've got to in effect find your collaborators, and then you've got to navigate that conversation around quite what you're going to bring to the table. And given that the sciences and art have different languages, we use terms in different ways, like even the word ecosystem can have a very different meaning depending on the context. A practitioner actually navigate that? How do you work out who it is that you're going to collaborate with? How do you work out how that relationship is going to work?
So practically, my first collaboration started, I remember, at the university, where I have the first taste of how a collaboration with a scientist fact is really the languages that we use are different. The methodologies of work that we use are different. The methodologies that the scientists use is obviously based on the very on the scientific facts, and the way and the methodology are more intuitive and more towards the creation and more imaginative. So there are practically two elements that are in contrast. I see it as a contrast, but this is the point where the artist uses the scientific research and through the artistic intuition try to create this dialogue. So for example, when you started to do some scientific research, then the artist of the mind of the artist start to create something on that, and that is the true moment of creation. That is the true I think the true ability of the artist, because it is through the creation that we are going to go to the next phase of the experiment on any scientific research. And yes, I think this is a very important thing, because the scientists share the scientific research with you as an artist, and then you can try to learn everything that you can. But this moment of the convergence of when the artists start to imagine things and to start the creative process based on that scientific research, I think is a very important moment on the history of the human civilization, because this is the moment where civilization is created. So for me, I mean, I cannot see anything. Yes, as you were saying, we can make an analog with maybe with the Renaissance, when it was a very important moment in history. But I think I see, because of the projects of the artists and scientists are doing now, because of the research that we are doing, this is a very important moment in history. So yes, try to make a collaboration with a scientist. It implies in the creation of new methodologies, and everything is just being an experiment now. Everything is experimental, because what all the artists are creating now, the artists that are basing the artist practice with the scientific collaboration, is everything is experimental. You never know what is going to happen, which path the things that you are creating are going to take you. So I think also that is wonderful, because you don't know where it's going, but you just know that you are in a path of creation. And this is, for me, this is the point of human civilization, really. So that is very, very important, and then it's amazing. It makes me really happy.
It makes me think to the person that, as far as I know, is the first character in history to have formally recognized what we would today know as the virtues of steam. And it was Goethe that actually highlighted that it was imperative that artists and scientists and art and science work together. And his view on that was because he recognized that the artist can see information very differently to the scientist. And it strikes me that that is really critical at the moment, because although you know, we have many and varied crises unfolding around the world, from biodiversity loss to climate change, you name it, what we've seen is that a lot of the science has not actually created that emotive moment at which society at large feels compelled to respond. And obviously the scientist is not a storyteller. The scientist is someone that aggregates facts and that presents them, but without necessarily having a particular narrative. Whereas the artist is an expert in story crafting, that whether or not they're creating a picture or a film or whatever it might be, understands how to take the individual on a journey. And so, you know, it feels to me that this has been a very long time coming, you know, where we're at the moment. But in effect, it's been catalyzed by some of the extraordinary technologies to which you've already referenced. So I'm going to start now to delve into some of your thoughts on the future of bioart. And the first thing that I really wanted to draw on is, as an artist working with other species, how do you imagine that interspecies collaboration may shape the visual and the wider arts in the near, the medium, and the far future?
Well, at the moment, I see it in this moment of that we are living. It's all about experimentation. It's all about acknowledging that this connection with these other beings, of microbes, of living systems, of living matter, is all acknowledging this connection with these beings. In the nearest future, I see it as more artists are coming into the bioart field, and also the convergence with technology, with new methodologies of creating art, and this thing that I told you about, that through the collaboration between the artists and the scientists is where new methodologies are created. So it's all a path that we are creating in this moment in history. And for example, in the future, in the next decades, I see that the artists will create, through the scientific research, will create the path, will pave the path for the new systems and new concepts that belong to the future of the human civilization. So I see the connection, for example, of humans with all the beings in Earth, and for example, microbes, microbial ecosystems. I see a connection through energy. Obviously, this is more as an artistic view, but I see and I think that through the convergence of bioart, the new technologies, and the artistic intuition, this can be achieved. So I see, for example, in the next decades, this collaboration between humans and the nature as a more acknowledged thing, and something that can be achieved.
And you know, it strikes me actually, because I know your work relates a lot to energy, and energy really, it's very much central to many of the problems that we face, and more particularly the fact that as humanity, as a peoples, most are, as it were, not aware of really how fundamental energy conversion is to their day-to-day life. So, for example, the fact that we're live streaming now, we're doing it through a social media platform, all the time that we're doing this, energy somewhere is being used. But because of the fact that we can't see the mechanism of that process, because that is invisible to us, because it's happening some distant place, and we are effectively being sent that energy remotely to power this conversation today, you know, we're at a point now where unless we as a people start to recognize the energy that we use, and we're conscious of that moment to moment, we really will continue to enter into a state of crisis, because obviously we can't carry on carrying the energy load that we have. adding to it in terms of all sorts of different apps and technologies, you know, metaverse, NFTs and all of this, and address the critical environmental problems that we face. So as an artist, it really strikes me that you are hitting at a, you know, a seminal problem of our time, and you are among a community that are profoundly well equipped to enable people to see energy. And obviously within the work that you're doing at the moment, that's very much at the level of the organism, at the most fundamental level, at the creature that has consumed the plants or the other organism that ultimately generated, you know, it captured its energy from the sun, if we're talking about the ultimate energy source. So you know, I think it's not surprising that you're creating profound works, because, you know, you're really hitting on a really important subject. So my next question, sorry if you feel like you're being interrogated here, but I think we need to hear your thoughts. You've got hands-on experience of working with biomaterials, with biocomputing, among other bio applications for art. How do you see these fields, if you like, changing, or in effect influencing how we experience art on a visceral level?
Yes, well, for example, with my experience of the biomaterials, biomaterials are a very important field now, that because everybody is trying to make experiments with, for example, with living systems, with the microbes, and are trying to bring all these beings into the materials that are to be crafted, or part of a creation of an artwork. So is this with the use of the biomaterials, I see it as really as a link to, because of the material is a living thing. With the artistic intuition, what the artist can achieve is another type of creation. It's not going to be the same a sculpture that is made of stone. It's going to be a living thing that is going to, for example, what I'm trying to achieve is, through the biomaterials, try to create a connection that talks about energy with other beings, and energy with the soil, for example. So I think this use of the biomaterials, biocomputing, and everything that is related to biology, and in this convergence with the technology, is going to take us to a next step on our relation with arts, and finally with the universe. For example, in my project Terras Lux, what the final aim of the project is to, for example, through the relation with the biomaterials, to create and be capable of visualize the flow of energy that flows from the human beings with organic matter, and finally with the energy flow on the universe. So, I mean, everything that starts just as a biomaterial, but always with artistic intuition, you can enhance this knowledge, you can enhance this material towards a more important achievement for humanity. So I work with bioart and with living systems, and I love scientific research, but my practice is, and my beauty as an artist, is also to connect this scientific knowledge with something bigger than us, this flow of energy, and also the spirituality that belongs to humanity, because we cannot forget about that. We are humans and we have these connections. So yes, this is also a very important part of on my practice, and this is what I try to achieve. I mean, yes, the convergence of art and science, but also what links with humanity is the spirituality at the end.
And you know, another thing I was thinking is that, I mean, one of the challenges in effect of working with biological materials is that they are inherently cyclical. I mean, they are born and they die. And so effectively, I mean, we may find ways of preserving biological materials, biological artworks, but if we do that, we would be qualitatively changing the character of the biological materials, and that it would be a little bit like Damien Hirst's sharks, in that the only reason that they are preserved is because they're in formaldehyde. And if they weren't subject to that chemical process, they would have rotted and we would just see bones. And so fundamentally, as an artist, you know, you have that decision when working with bioart as to whether or not you're going to modify the organisms, such as putting in them some sort of chemical concoction, such that you preserve them, or you allow them to fulfill their natural process, which is to die. And that seems to me, in a sense, to change some of the, if you like, financial mechanisms of art, because historically, when art was commissioned, it was commissioned to keep. It was commissioned for a family to put a portrait on the wall that would sit there ad infinitum, and you know, and or other works. Whereas this is something that it strikes me that if you're to invest in this, if you were to commission this, if you are to be one of the people that is financing this work, your motives have to be different. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, for example, when the artists get inside of the lab or get these collaborations with the scientists, what is creating is this shift on the conventional use of art, that, for example, it was made to make an object prevail through eternity, through the centuries. But this is a shift in the methodologies of the artist, because if we use living matter, living systems in our creations, obviously it will last for some time. It won't be eternal. So it's another way of creating. It's another way of using time, temporality, applying to the artwork through the use of bioart. So it's completely a shift in how the methodologies of the artists work. And I think is really beautiful, because, for example, if you are working with for example, your plates of agar and all these microbes that are growing into your bio sculpture, it implies a temporality, and I think is really beautiful, because this idea of temporality add like a poetical dimension to the work. So we are seeing a lot of layers in how the bioart can be implemented, how it creates new methodologies, how everything is emerging now. And I think it's really beautiful. I really love the temporality, the temporary dimension that the bioart brings to this creation of art.
So the questions keep coming, but actually, just to throw in a thought, you know, one of the things that came to me when I was researching some of the concepts in my PhD of a few years ago was the fact that one of the things that people tend to forget is that every living thing around us and everything that has been living is a record of the environment, and it's storing in it a whole range of different data, from the gaseous composition of the atmosphere, for example, how much oxygen was in the atmosphere, to such things as certain events like fires. And so we have what is in effect a global database of information that has effectively been fossilized through different processes. And that's why we can access information, accurate information from hundreds of millions of years ago. If, for example, we look at such things as the distribution of certain features on certain organisms, that in turn it gives us these scientific insights. And I'm picturing here this question of, would it be possible that we preserved bioart through some sort of fossilization process? Would it be possible to fast track processes that historically within the sort of the wider earth geologically take huge expanses of time? could we perhaps fast track that? It's just a question. Maybe some of the people watching could throw in their ideas on this, particularly if they've got any expertise in geology and in chemistry. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you know, it strikes me we're right at the start of this bioart journey, really, and you know, thinking about how that is going to change our relationship with this art over time is, you know, is really interesting, and that we could accept the cyclicality inherent in biological organisms, or we could challenge that. But again, to do that, we've got to create what would effectively be an unnatural process, and that even if we fossilize something, we were to do that in a timescale meaningful to us as well, not even as individuals, but as a species, we'd have to make some sort of scientific intervention. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, now when you were sharing your thoughts about this, for example, the geological information, the fossils, all this, I see nature and as a huge laboratory where the artists and all the people can gather information, can gather data. For example, in the fossils, you can see information that belongs to the ancient times. So I see it as a field, as a place where you can collect this data. And for example, my vision as an artist on this thought is it would be the creation, and it's very interesting because in the last days I have been thinking about this idea of how as an artist we can create an artwork that that through the visualization of cells, for example, cells of fossils or cells of matter that belongs to the ancient times, how can we visualize this process, biological processes, and how through the use of artistic intuition, it can take us back on time or it can take us further in the future. So I see biological matter as a, for example, as a timeline of matter that can take you towards the future, or it can help you to visualize also the past. It can be in a speculative artistic way, or it can be as a scientific with a scientific base. So these are my thoughts about your idea.
Brilliant. And you know, again, as you were talking about your work, another thing that struck me is often when people think about art and nature, they will think about interventions such, for example, as sort of, again, geological matter. It could be piles of stones, it could be images that have been chiseled out of rocks or what have you. But there is this sort of permanency often when we think about art and nature historically. But this field of bioart is really challenging, not just the sort of the spatial dimensions, in that, you know, some of the things that you're working with are tiny. You're using microscopes and other technology to actually even see the things that you're working with. And it's also challenging the timescales, in that it's forcing you as an artist and the entire community to think about the way in which their art is going to change over time, and its relevance, and how that relates to its meaning and its intent. So moving to the next question, what do you think are the biggest challenges that are facing those that are entering this new and emerging field? And what are some of your thoughts about how those challenges can be addressed?
Well, the challenges, starting, for example, as an artist that creates with conventional materials, it can be very challenging to understand how you can get into the bioart field. And yes, I think it's only through studying scientific research. And the real challenge is to sometimes find the collaborators that want and are interested in art. My experience, not all the scientists are interested in collaborations with artists. A lot of are interested in these collaborations, and it's also the challenge to find someone that is also focused on this creation of new knowledge. And for example, when you start to study scientific research and the artists start to enhance this research through the creation and through artistic intuition, you have to find the right scientist that wants to collaborate into this creation. I think for me, in my experience, it might be some of the challenges that we as an artist face to enter into the bioart field. It's not easy, but you know, as an artist, you always find a way to use creativity and to reach your goals.
So what would help then? I think what you're saying is that if there were further interventions, if there were things that in effect help to network scientists and artists, help to facilitate those meetings, such that, you know, because these are, well, historically they are very separated groups, in that historically those that studied the arts went to one college and those that studied the sciences went to another place, and you didn't even necessarily socialize because, you know, historically these were so disparate that there wasn't that connectivity. So things that actually enable further cross-fertilization, and it could be informal things. I mean, it could be things like clubs or spaces, even sort of networking drinks, but something that basically lets this community get together, online or offline, to know about one another's work, to exchange ideas. Something like that could be useful, you think?
Yes, I think that will be very important because there are a lot of artists that want to get now into the bioart field, but sometimes there's no chance to talk with the scientists. So sometimes you don't know how to approach them. But yes, once this step of approaching the scientist is gone through, then you can get more comfortable and then achieve more collaborations with the scientists. But obviously, yes, as artists, we need places and events that can bring the scientists and artists together, because I think as a society is an important part of culture of society, because this convergence of the artists and scientists is creating the culture that we are living now. So it's an important part of culture now for me. Yes.
And you've, I mean, unlike a lot of individuals, I mean, you've studied higher education in not one country, not two, but three, haven't you? In London, UK, in Florence, Italy, was it?
Yeah.
Florence? Yeah. And in Mexico City, Mexico. How did you find the different cultures in effect across those countries affected how you felt about the potentialities at the interface, in this case, of science and art? Did you feel that they were in effect equal in their capacity to enable you to work in this very you know, emerging way? Or did you find that their cultures were rather different and that there were virtues and vices to each?
Yes, when I started to study in Mexico, when I first had my first experiences in art, then in Italy, where I lived like 7 years, and then I came to the UK, where I live now. And obviously, as an artist, as a human being, it has been wonderful to see how each culture can teach you something and can add you something to your artistic research. Obviously, each culture is different. What I can say, for example, in Mexico, we are very open-minded as for example, into the unknown of the things. In the culture, we are not afraid of what is going to happen. We just go for the things, and this thing of just go for it is something that my Mexican culture has helped me a lot to go through all the difficulties of getting into the bioart field. For example, when I was in Italy, Italian people are perfectionists. Everything is perfect. Everything is in the right moment at the right time and the right place. So what I've been doing is through traveling to different countries, I have been learning what I can use for my artistic practice. And I have been absorbing the different things that the different cultures can offer to an artist. Obviously, you have to be very humble and you have to be very open to absorb all of this. Here in the UK, I have found this. It was the place where I found this convergence of art and science, and obviously all the people, the artists, the scientists, the people that are in London creating all the time. I can say that this environment of creation really um, helps you to create more, really inspires you to create more. So yes, each country gives you something and adds something to, so that you can achieve something. So it has been, yes, a wonderful journey of meeting a lot of people, different cultures. Yes, amazing.
And in the course of your work, and obviously partly because you've studied and worked in so many different places, what are the projects? What are the ideas, the talents in the bioart space that have really inspired you? Which of your peers do you look to and think your work is blowing my mind?
So what do you want to know?
So thinking about the work of your peers, thinking about those that you work within bioart and of whom you're aware of in this space, whose work really inspires you? Who is doing work that you really think that is deeply compelling, and that makes me very proud to be part of this community, if you like?
Well, at this moment, there is a lot of artists that are doing amazing projects. Obviously, the most representative of the bioartists will be Anna Dumitriart, Jennifer Willett. There are a lot of artists that I really admire, and you always can learn something from each artistic approach. So yes, there are a lot of bioartists that I admire. Not a specific one. I always try to make research in the artist field from with a lot of artists. So yes, I think it's the bioart field in itself that inspires me to explore more, to learn more, and to study more. There is not a specific artist, but now my interest is really focused on the research that the scientists are doing at the moment, because that is really what ignites in me the power of creation and this uh, power of what I call is the visualization of the new systems. So this is really the thing what I am focused now on, and what really interests me is the scientific research of scientists, because this helps me and produces something in my brain, in my mind, that can help me to see these new systems. It is a way to not see into the future, but see something that is going to be created maybe in the next decades or in the next years. And yes, it is like that.
Brilliant. Well, just a couple more questions, because we're now at getting up for 50 minutes. So the first question, one of the questions for context to those that are listening, that I'm going to be asking every person that joins this session series is the following question. So, Audrey, the year is 2050. What does the biomaterialized world look and feel like? What are your thoughts on that?
That is an amazing question. And I think, or dreaming on the year 2050, I see really the acknowledging of humanity, to acknowledge the power and the potential of artistic intuition to create and pave this new ways towards new systems that are going to be the base of the new societies of the future. So I see in the year 2050 the real acknowledging of this potentiality of the mind, of the human mind, of humanity, to create these new systems. So that's the thing that I see in the future, and we can achieve this through the convergence of art, science, technology, and also very important the spirituality, because that part is what also makes us human. So I see in the future this convergence and how humanity acknowledges and achieves its full potential into the creation of new systems.
You know, I just had a thought as you were speaking there. One of the things, if you look to science of the past, well, really since the 1800s, is the fact that though humanity has been observing the other species of the world since prior even to the advent of our species, and there are peoples, there are cultures around the world, both extinct and extant indigenous cultures, that very much recognize the innate intelligence and the other qualities within and of other living organisms. Certainly if we think to humans of the past several hundred years, you know, certainly for the last better part of the last millennia, humanity looked at animals as being distinct from humans. We looked at other creatures as being a different thing altogether. We were somehow different, we were special, we were better than them. And there didn't seem to be much awareness of the fact that actually within the history of culture, of all world cultures, that's actually quite a new concept, in that if you look to the older, more ancient cultures, they recognized that we are in effect an animal. We are biologically and in many ways not very different to other species, that we have just evolved certain traits, certain technologies, certain things that on the surface of it make us look very different. But as the last sort of couple of hundred years have unfolded, we have, if you like, started to regain more universally an understanding that actually other animals, other creatures, and other things, even trees, they have an innate intelligence. They have memory. They have, in some cases, you know, social networks. They, even plants have social networks, what we might in a loose sense think of that. And they have capacity for emotion, for feeling. And we had to almost, you know, we had to sort of, if you like, depart from understanding that to then actually re-emerge to a place where we are starting to recognize that. But if we look at where science is now, all of the discoveries of the past couple of hundred years are literally going to be sort of relatively minuscule compared to what's coming, because we now have such extraordinary equipment, scientific, technological, otherwise, particularly artificial intelligence, that can enable us to compute information on a huge scale and very, very quickly. And so our whole understanding of the non-human world, of animals, of plants, of every other living thing, can become more sophisticated. And so it does strike me that, you know, what you're speaking to in terms of your vision for 2050 being a world in which our relationship with these other systems has qualitatively changed. It is much more sophisticated in a sense. I can very much relate that to what is happening in science. And also, if we look back historically, we know that we had that, although we didn't have such detail, as it were, such technical detail, we certainly had that innate knowledge in the ancient past. So yeah, I can totally relate to your vision there, Audrey. And your last question, again, this is one that every person, every guest on this series is going to be asked, but also for those watching, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on this. So, Audrey, you have one wish. If a genie popped out of a magical lamp or a test tube or petri dish in the lab and granted you just one wish for our biofutures, what would it be?
Well, my wish that I personally have on for my artistic practice and my artistic journey is to understand life through art, and to be able to develop my project Terra's Lux that is going to help me to achieve and visualize this connection of energy flow between the microbial ecosystems, human beings, and finally the macrocosm in the outer space, so that finally maybe I can speculatively or artistically I can achieve to see this energy flow between the microscopic world, the human scale, and the macrocosms, and finally to the universe. So this flow of energy that comes into the universe, and finally we have a vision about this. That would be my wish.
Dream. Well, hopefully there is a genie out there who heard that. It's been a real pleasure to have you, Audrey. You know, I've loved the thoughts that you've shared with us. Your work is extraordinary. I will share in the links your websites and your other links to your current live projects. I would say to anyone that is watching this live or that tunes in later, do look at Audrey's work. It will blow your mind. For those people that tried to join us for our session last week, we had some major tech glitches. So Nancy Dinas is actually rescheduled to the 5th of April. So it will be the same time, but on the 5th of April. And we also, coming up, we also have Gavin and Alice from Full Grown, who are going to be sharing with us insights about their incredible business. I'm sure many of you will know it. They grow furniture. They're actually co-producing their works with living organisms. So they're coming up. I will only be announcing the sessions that are coming up about 2 weeks in advance. So this is actually to give our guests some flexibility, so that if we have to move things around a little bit, we can. But yeah, Nancy Dinas and Alice and Gavin are coming up very soon. So thank you for joining us today. And Audrey, I hope we have another conversation, because there's so much that we didn't get a chance to cover, but it's been a real pleasure.
Yes, definitely stay in touch. Also, I saw your research about the panarchic codes, and that is really interesting. Yes, I love also your work. And yes, thank you everyone for connecting with us and sharing these visions on Biofutures. Check also my link tree in my bio, where I have links for the explanation of the Terra's Look project on Interalia magazine and other magazines. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Melissa. And I'm so happy to meet you.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.